it's now my great pleasure in welcoming Dr. Ian Boardley from the University of Birmingham and Erik Duiven from the Netherlands Doping Authority to join us on today's panel, where we will look at our Clean Sport Plan 2030. So let me welcome you to the panel, Erik and Ian.
Hello, everybody.
Delighted to be welcomed by Erik and Ian, and really what we want to try and do with the first session of today's event is to highlight what exactly is the Clean Sport Plan and how we've gone about developing it. So Ian, can we start with you for just a key summary on what are the key findings from the Clean Sport Plan?
Yeah, sure. Afternoon, everyone. So this was just very briefly. We engaged with practitioners and researchers working in clean sport and anti-doping, experts in the area, to try to identify some of the key areas that were needed in research, and also questions that underpin those areas. And we identified 8 research areas that were considered priorities, but some of those were higher priority than others. And what we did there was we allocated more research questions to the highest priority research areas. So the highest priority research area was, and tying in very well with something we discussed in the review session yesterday, was around the effectiveness of anti-doping interventions and education programs. So in particular, the ones that athletes are being exposed to and the ones that are being utilised at the moment, but also in terms of their long-term evaluation and developing reliable tools to assist that evaluation. And then the second main research area was developmental influences from outside of sport on young children. So a lot of the research that's been conducted today has been with adults and adolescents and not always elite athletes. And what this was identifying was trying to understand what's leading to the development of sporting and moral values in athletes, and some of the characteristics that are influencing decisions around clean sport behaviours in our adult lives, but those developmental influences younger, so earlier on in people's developmental life course. So they were the 2 key areas, the ones that are the highest priority. And obviously we've got the download on the Knowledge Exchange platform to see the full research agenda.
Thank you, Ian, for that introduction. And Erik, if we can bring you into the conversation, in terms of the 8 priority areas that have been identified, why is that important to the practitioner community?
Well, I think that it's not only important for the practitioners, but as we say constantly, we try to bridge the gap between policy, research and practice. The Clean Sport Plan has taken a look at the opinions of all the experts in the field, and they came up with this plan. These are the priorities that we have. These are the things that we really can use in the field. So it gives us focus and direction. It helps us to put the money and the time where we want it to be, and in the end really have outcomes that we can use in practice. So it applies to all areas. We're more effective if we take this kind of approach and use this plan to see where we want to put our time and money in for the next 10 years.
Yeah, Erik, that's a really key point, isn't it? In that the process of developing the plan and the strategic priorities very much drew upon multiple stakeholder input from both the researcher and the practitioner community. And Ian, from the researcher's side of the lens, how can this be helpful to them, and what do you hope that this plan will start to achieve through its implementation?
Yeah, I think there's a few reasons why this is really important for researchers. Firstly, it gives direction to the research efforts. So I think in the past, although there might be some direction from the specific call, I think to some degree researchers have been trying to guess or second guess what specifically was wanted from funders, but also probably drawing upon their own research interests. But that doesn't necessarily always mean that what they're submitting and what they're proposing to research is directly aligning with what practitioners want. I think because we've got this connection and input from both practitioners and researchers, we're now identifying areas that have got real importance and meaning for the research community, also for practitioners. So there's much greater likelihood that our research is going to be utilised and impactful at the practitioner level. It also prevents duplication of effort. So obviously we might have 2 or 3 researchers submitting very similar bids, or getting alternate funding from different routes and doing very similar work. And obviously making new contributions, although as researchers we do want to replicate findings, but we're doing that purposefully and in a strategic way, not by chance. But I think it also allows us as researchers to develop long-term programs of research and plans for research, because we can see where the research is heading and what the overall objective of the area of research is. So we're not just conducting unique individual studies, but we're also, each study is part of a much bigger plan. I think the plan helps guide and direct.
Yeah, brilliant. And actually, we've just had a question in the Q&A box that I'd just like to draw upon, I think, because it follows on, Ian, from what we're talking about from a researcher perspective. What do you think are the most appropriate and feasible methods to measure effectiveness in anti-doping? So that's been posted by Daniel Westmattleman. What are the most effective and appropriate methods to measure effectiveness in anti-doping?
I think we probably need a combination of measures to evaluate effectiveness. So we need to be using some standardized psychometric measures that we can compare across studies as a result of the program. But we also need to be getting in-depth qualitative feedback and engagement at the sort of individual level to get the depth of understanding how people are actually understanding and interpreting the services. And we need to the time at the different levels.
And
Erik, any reflections from you?
Well, I think that I'm working as an educator for 11 years now, and at the start it was a lot about information provision, and it's easier to measure information, whether it's people really understand what you have said. But now we have been going to other directions as well. So we're measuring skills, we're measuring the values behind it. And I think for us as practitioners, it all starts with what do you really want to achieve? Do you have your outcomes? Have you written them down? And then based on those outcomes, you can measure the effectiveness. So it really starts, and that's why I'm really happy with the International Standard for Education. It really starts with your plan. What do you try to achieve? Have you written it down? And then it also helps the researchers to measure effectiveness based on that.
Yeah, and the ability for then one of the ethos and intentions around the Clean Sport Alliance of bridging that gap, of ensuring the researchers, practitioners, policymakers are at the start of that journey together many times in producing those questions and plans is part of that process. And I think we've talked about, then you've highlighted, both of you, the importance of taking a strategic approach through the implementation of that Clean Sport plan. But there are potential challenges and barriers to that implementation. Ian, do you want to start by maybe reflecting on what maybe some of those barriers may be and how we might start to overcome them?
Yeah, I think obviously one of the key ones, and the one that immediately comes to mind and was mentioned when we're gathering information from researchers, was the research funding, insufficient research funding. So we do need a lot more research funding if we're going to do the collaborative, high quality research that's needed. So obviously that lobby for research funding is important. But I think the stakeholder engagement is really important as well. So one of the barriers is potential for lack of stakeholder engagement. So we need to think about how we're going to make sure we engage all stakeholders throughout the research process and not just at the end of the research process. I think developing collaborative networks, research key stakeholders from WADA, from the IEC, and having those set up in place, ensure group participants get engagement from participants for the output that I think research, ensure that that stakeholder engagement is there throughout the research process.
And Erik, from the point of view of the practitioners and the implementation of that, what are potentially some of the barriers that we've identified there, and how do you see us overcoming those really for that long-term plan?
I'm actually quite optimistic. The momentum is on our side. We as a profession are quite young. We try to find a common language. We try to find a real solid group of people bringing everything forward and bringing it forward faster. If we look at, for instance, WADA's social science research program, that's been updated. We have the European Commission making more and more funding available via its Erasmus Plus program. So I see a lot of enablers, and I see fewer barriers at this point. So yeah, I'm quite excited for the next 10 years and see what we can come up with.
And that excitement is really important, actually, isn't it? You know, we really want to have that element of enthusiasm and kind of purpose-led interactions and interventions moving forward. And Erik, I think that gives us a really nice point to maybe reflect on the developments as we see it around the knowledge exchange platform for the Clean Sport Alliance, and how that and its development over the next few years might help us realise that ambition then of the plan.
Yeah, thanks. The Clean Sport Alliance is something that we came up with as a group within this Erasmus Plus project. Just 5 ADOs and a bunch of researchers, and we've been working on it for the last 3 years. And now it's time for us to make it more open and let the alliance grow. Have people come in, make it also more global, because now it's quite a European group of people. And luckily, we have secured funding for the next 2 years via the Respect P project. So in the upcoming 2 years, we'll be able to really make that alliance grow and get it out of our heads and into the heads of other people and see if we can share more knowledge and experiences to set up more international research projects. So it becomes a more global approach that everybody can benefit from. But please give us the next 2 years to make it more visible and clearer on how we want to do that.
That's brilliant. And actually, Erik, you mentioned there, you know, it's very much it's originated from a European space and place. But actually, even just looking at the general chat this morning or this afternoon, it's really great to see people saying hello. We've got hellos from foggy Germany, but then we go to sunny Cape Town in South Africa. We move to Dallas, Texas. You know, we then go to sunny Derby. If we look at it, we have then different places, and please feel free to kind of let us know where you're joining us from today in that chat function, because it's really nice to see just exactly where we are reaching through today's forum. But I think that's a really nice end for us to reflect on in that plan. The ambition is there to bring about collaboration, to bring about long-term thinking in order to realise the ambition of clean sport. And I think we are trying through the platform. We will continue with the newsletters that originate from the platform on a quarterly basis to engage more broadly with the community and invite suggestions and opportunities for further advancement. So that is an open call. It's very much an enabler in how we move forward together. So please let me thank Ian and Erik for their participation in our opening session today. If you've got any questions on the plan, please do get in touch with us. And I'd like to now just take the opportunity to say we will be very much welcoming Amanda Hudson and Tony Cunningham to session 2, and they will start with a presentation from their side in terms of the title being Bridging the Gap Between Research, Policy and Practice. How can we realise the benefits of clean sport education? So they will present their thoughts to you first, and then we will open up to a Q&A with Amanda and Tony following their presentation. So thank you again to Ian and Erik for kicking us off, and we'll see you very shortly for session 2.